Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hello. Hello. Nice to see you. Let's see who's saying hello. Yay, Jenny's here. Awesome. If you are here and you want to say hello, please say hello in the comments and welcome to the Duchenne Method Mind Body Alignment weekly kind of class Q&A interactive, usually 30 to 45-minute class on a subject around mind-body alignment. And the reason why I like to do it this way is that I am hoping to get more people to engage with me as I am sharing information about a topic that I think is important for us to be in relationship with. Due to the complexity actually of mind, body, spirit, and emotional alignment. And today, a very dear and near topic to my heart, which is the art of mindful communication. So without further ado, I just want to dive into it. And along the way, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add them in the comments, because it gives me some insight into what you might want to develop a little bit further if you yourself are going through some issues with communication, your communication style, and how you might increase your level of present awareness, your level of emotional intelligence, and to become more and more mindful of what is actually going on in that head of yours in terms of your thinking patterns. If you're someone that tends to overthink or who tends to be worried a lot of the time, there are ways that we can start to train ourselves to become more aligned, more connected, so that we might be able to hear ourselves. We might be able to hear what we're thinking. And are those thoughts helpful to us? And if not, then there are ways that we can change them. So, the art of mindful communication. So today I'm really taking a look at how to unlock wellness, to become more aware, better, healthier, more grounded, more in relationship with ourselves, first and foremost, in order to learn how to communicate more effectively. And one of the things that happens a lot is we think of mindful communication, or perhaps it's, thinking of it as a skill that we're acquiring another skill, when in fact, it's really a practice that has the potential to transform how we show up in the world. So mindful communication, from the way I'm exploring it, is not just through verbal language. It's also very much through non-verbal language. And one of the best things about children, I think, is that their language, their nonverbal language, can be very, very clear, right? It's the same thing with animals, actually. If an animal doesn't like something, you're going to know right away based on how they react, right? How they respond, if you're touching them in a way that's uncomfortable. And children are very much the same. So in a sense, we're going to go back a little bit so that we can be more in the present moment. Because if you're more aware in the present moment, you have more control, you have more ability as to how you respond to situations in your life. So today I want us to move into exploring the concept of mindful communication, understand its benefits, and learn how to incorporate it in our daily lives. So first, let's answer the question, what is mindful communication? So mindful communication, at its very core, it's a way to communicate that is practiced, rooted in the principles of mindfulness. And mindfulness is this idea of being fully present in the moment so that we might become more aware of how we're communicating, how we are using the tone of our voice, our body energetics, our body language, and ultimately the actual language that we're using. Mindful mindful communicators, right? The more we practice this, the more we learn to listen with intention, we respond thoughtfully, and we begin to cultivate empathy, trust, and respect in the way that we communicate. So, this practice essentially goes far beyond just the words we use, as I've said. It encompasses our entire way of how we are being in a conversation. And so the benefits, you can imagine already what those benefits might be. One of the benefits in learning how to become mindful communicators is enhanced relationships. Your entire body, your entire energetics starts to shift because you are more mindful in the way that you exchange. So it enhances your relationships at every level. You're also much more aware of how you share information, so that if you get triggered, how many of us get triggered in conversation? I know I do. I get triggered if I hear something or somebody says something in a certain way. It might trigger a reaction from me. Practicing mindful communication helps me to pause, helps me to stop, and then to actually listen from a different perspective. And in so doing, of course, you are enhancing your relationships, not just with your loved ones, but in the way that I see it, it's actually a real bridge to learning how to communicate with people at large in a much more mindful manner, especially today, because there are so many dichotomous opinions and ideas about how to be, about belief systems, etc., in the world. So we really want to be able to develop the sensitivity, the sensibility to wanting to enhance our relationships. And sometimes enhancing our relationships also means to move away from them. So I'm not suggesting that anyone stays in a situation where communication is abusive or diminutive. We want to be super aware that as we develop our capacity to communicate from a mindful perspective, that we're actually also learning when to not be in communication. So mindful communication is not just about speaking with another. It's much more about developing a heightened sense of awareness in the moment and knowing when to engage with another or to step out of engaging with another. So this brings us to another benefit, which is conflict resolution. If you are able to positively communicate with another, if the other person is able to hear you, then you can potentially move into enhancing your relationships through conflict resolution. Because conflict is a natural part of human interaction. We're going to have conflicts with one another. What makes the difference is how we navigate those conversations, how we navigate those conflicts. So, mindful communication can also be a tool used to de escalate conflicts because you are learning to listen with more astute perception. You are not already having a conversation in your head as the other person is speaking with you. You're actually able to take a little bit of space to hear them with more clarity. So the idea is that we move into a state of listening, and we'll talk about this in a moment. We're actively listening instead of being in a state of reactivity. And when we're triggered, it's very easy to react instead of respond. So we don't want to be impulsive. This is a big part of it. The impulsivity in communication is oftentimes what gets us in trouble. So impulsivity is related to being able to manage our emotional output. So mindful communication is also a tool to help us raise our level of consciousness and become more emotionally intelligent, emotionally connected to what arises. So, emotional intelligence is basically the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions and those of others. That's a big piece. It's not just us. When we are emotionally intelligent, we clearly can manage our emotions better, but also those of others around us. And mindful communication is that potent tool that helps us to develop EQ, emotional intelligence. So, in so doing, what happens? You start to increase self awareness. You become more aware so that if you're receiving something, if you're hearing something that is detrimental, one of my clients recently was sharing with me about her son who was being bullied in school. And, that's a very difficult situation because there's a lack of awareness clearly in the environment in which that child is finding themselves. And it's a very delicate way because usually bullies are the ones who actually are the most scared, right? They're the ones who are actually not feeling loved and trusted in their environment. And so for the person that is being bullied, especially a young child or even in your teenage years, it can become very difficult to learn how to develop these skills, especially at such a young age. And I want to encourage all of you parents to explore this topic with your children, the art of mindful communication, because it's going to help them to become better attuned to their own emotional output. And you can also teach them very specific words that they can use. And you can also teach them how to get out of a toxic environment when they need to. So, this is definitely something to be explored as adults, of course, and also to start to be able to have these conversations with your children to help them also raise their level of self awareness, to have these honest conversations at a very young age. The benefits are super powerful. And then we start to create, educate, and build inner resilience for our young people so that they might be able to identify when someone is approaching them inappropriately or is speaking with them inappropriately. So, this level of increased self awareness starts at a very, very young age. It's the idea that we are planting the seeds of self reflection in ourselves and, of course, in our children. And when we have self reflection, we tend to respond to things in life with a more positive and emotionally intelligent output. This, in turn, affects our beliefs and our behaviors. So, the self awareness piece is super important, so that you might be able to raise your level of consciousness and teach it to your children in the same way. And then the benefit of that for all of us is stress reduction. When we become more personally aware, it decreases stress in our lives. Miscommunication and misunderstandings happen all the time. And if we're not mindful of them, they definitely will increase stress and anxiety. So the idea is for you to sit with that person, maybe in your household, that is having a problem, that is dealing with a crisis in their life, and to take a moment to sit with them and to really consider and ponder what might be some other potentialities. How else might we look at this situation? So, in support, when you're using the art of mindful communication, right? And why I say it unlocks wellness is because it literally unlocks wellness in your body physiologically when you are more present, when you are aware, when you become more in relationship with developing emotional intelligence, which means you become more sensitive to how you're feeling in the moment. This helps to reduce stress because you are calming down your nervous system. And instead of moving into defense, fight, flight, or freeze response, which is what happens when we get triggered, physiologically, we can take a step back, we can lean back and observe the situation from a different perspective. And we can help our loved ones with this by simply sitting down with them, not getting caught up in the drama of their story or whatever's going on for them in their lives, but instead to sit mindfully with them. And sometimes what's super helpful also is to simply sit in silence, because that is holding space for someone. This is being supportive for someone else. So, this whole idea that developing all of these really subtle tools in becoming more mindful communicators, mind, body, spirit, and emotionally, definitely will help to reduce stress and anxiety in your life. And to have the courage to step into communicating, conversing with people in your life. If there are issues, if you love someone and there's something that's unclear for you, or you read something by mistake that you weren't supposed to read and it kind of bothered you for a moment, don't be afraid to take a step into opening up the conversation with someone about what's bothering you. And if you're coming from a place, of course, of mindfulness, of mindful communication tools that I'm sharing with you today, then it's going to help you to clear your path, clear your mind, because when we are holding on to something that is, we had a conflict or an argument with someone, and if you're holding on to that, that becomes toxic in your body. It's the same thing with toxic environments. Do not allow for anyone to speak with you in an abusive manner. It doesn't matter who it is, your spouse, your parent, your sibling. No one has the right to speak to us from a place of abuse. And that is up to us how we choose to respond to that. Mostly, I would encourage you to move out of those environments, even if it's difficult. Sometimes it's not possible to have that exchange with someone because they're so caught up in their own anger, or they haven't processed their emotions, or they know nothing about the art of mindful communication or mindfulness. So it's not very useful to get into those exchanges with people who are unaware of these tools. So usually what I recommend, if possible, you just remove yourself from the situation, because staying in a toxic environment never helps. It actually triggers our energetic fields negatively. And of course, it affects our physiology, which induces stress and anxiety. The tool here is to start to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting, first and foremost with yourself, so that you might move out of the way when you feel that there's no way to give it some space. Sometimes we're like, yeah, but I need to deal with this right away, this is an emergency. And sometimes it is, but most of the time there is a space for you to move back. Take a look, take a wider lens, take a wider perspective as to what's occurring in your life. Calm down, calm your system down before you urge yourself into having to respond. Calm down. If it's a situation with other people, leave the space. If you're with someone else, you can leave with that person. Do not engage in these toxic exchanges, because that only increases the level of heightened emotional disrupt. So I want to invite you to consider incorporating mindful communication into your daily life. And some of the steps that we can take to incorporate mindful communication. So these are tangible steps. Number one, I mentioned it before, is active listening. Practicing active listening by fully focusing on the speaker without judgment or distraction. A lot of the time, the distraction is coming from our own minds because we're not fully focused on the other person. We are having a conversation in our minds about what the other person is saying. The practice is to give this person undivided attention. You don't interrupt them. You sit, you make eye contact, and you resist the urge to formulate your response while they are speaking. That means you're fully present to hear them. That alone diminishes a lot of conflict because the other person feels seen and heard. And isn't that what we all want? So, active listening, step number one. Step number two, pause before responding. The art of the pause. I've spoken about this many times. This is an active, pragmatic tool that you could use every single day. When someone speaks, take a moment to pause and gather your thoughts before responding. Take a few breaths. That's really the tool, right? Somebody is speaking. Take a few breaths. Drop into your body. Relax your nervous system. And a lot of the times, if you're not sure how to respond, a good way to do so is to simply tell the other person the truth, such as, I need to take a pause and just breathe in for a moment because I'm not quite sure how to respond at this moment. And I don't want to say anything that I don't mean. So please bear with me while I pause to collect my thoughts. This is a huge and important tool. How many times do we get in trouble because we respond so quickly or we react, right? We're triggered, we react right away. The pragmatic tool here is to sit and to pause before responding. Number three, try to respond from a place of empathy. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. That is such a useful tool. I know that it's not always easy to do, but it's so important to acknowledge the other person's feelings and perspectives, even if you don't agree. Empathic responses build trust and understanding. And it goes back to what I was sharing earlier about developing emotional intelligence. Putting ourselves in the other person's shoes helps us to develop emotional intelligence. Number four, practice self-reflection. Self-reflection helps us to become more aware of our communication style, our patterns, our triggers, and our emotional responses. Self-reflection helps us to become more grounded in the present moment. And some of the ways that you can develop your self-reflecting tools is by journaling. Every morning, take some time to journal, even if it's 5 minutes. Write down on paper what's going on in your heart and in your body. I do this every single morning. I have a journal. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes, depending on how much time I have. This really helps me to take a moment and reflect on how I'm feeling. How am I doing this morning? Because how I'm doing this morning, how I wake up in the morning, how I organize my morning has a huge impact into how the rest of my day is going to develop. So this tool of self-reflection. Number five, mindful breathing. Before you react to someone, practice incorporating mindful breathing techniques into your daily activity. And you can do this sometimes, even you might hear something, you might overhear a conversation that triggers you. Has that ever happened to you? You're hearing people think and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what are they talking about? Mindful breathing, this is an absolute tool to bring you back into the present moment. So just to recapitulate, we started with the tools I'm offering you today. 1, active listening. 2, pause before responding. 3, practice empathetic responses. Develop your muscle of empathy. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Number 4, self-reflection. You can deepen your relationship with self-reflection by journaling every morning or as often as you can. If it's not every morning, do it at least 3-4 times a week. Put yourself first and allow yourself to leave all of your emotions on paper in your journal. It really helps to empty out your system, calms down your nervous system. And also self-reflection through journaling helps to augment creativity. It helps to free ourselves of thoughts. We kind of empty out our heads. And that when there's more space in your mind and in your body, then there's more space for creativity. So look at it as a creative endeavor. So self-reflection. And finally, number 5 is mindful breathing. I've spoken about this time and time again. And I want to encourage you to just kind of have these tools drip into your life every day. Practice one every day. And if you have children, and as I know some of you do here, practice with them. You can write it up, right? You can encourage them in active listening. What's active listening? Put it on the fridge. Are we actively listening to one another during dinner, for example? You can practice while you're having dinner together. You can practice pausing before responding. These can turn into very fun games, even with adults, so that we develop this level of emotional intelligence, and which is what I profoundly believe is the foundation to changing our societal woes, to changing how we communicate with one another in our society, in our communities, to develop more tolerance and love and patience and acceptance. People are angry. People express anger because they are afraid. When we practice the art of mindful communication, we diminish our relationship with fear. We move into a higher level of consciousness and we develop skills with these tools I'm giving you, very simple tools that you start to integrate, incorporate on a daily basis to change the way that you think, to offer you the option of expanding your mind, having a different vision of what's possible for you in this world, in your life. It's amazing when we start to look beyond our own blinders, right? Like those blinders right next to your eyes. If you just start to open up a little bit, you can really start to feel into other people's situations. You can start to open your heart of compassion and understand that not everyone comes from the same place. And when fear is continuously injected in people, they become angry and they lash out. Our job in this group, in this world, in these types of teachings is to really learn how to better manage ourselves so that we might live a more peaceful life, that we continue to unlock wellness throughout our body, throughout all of our systems, and to communicate from a place of present awareness, that we feel embodied. We understand what embodiment means. Embodiment means that you are feeling, sensing what's occurring in your body at any given moment. And with that awareness, that is your guiding light into how to communicate verbally. Because if you're comfortable in your body, if you feel good in your body, naturally you tend to be more at ease. And people talk a lot about authenticity. How can I become more authentic? You can become more authentic by becoming more comfortable in your body. And what that means is you're making better choices for yourself. You're moving yourself out of toxic environments as much as you can. You're eating better foods every single day. You're drinking clean water every day. You're staying away from sugars and sodas. All of these things affect your mind. So if you're going to grow into becoming a more mindful communicator, you want to learn how to ingest food, drink, sunlight, life, smile, laughter, friends, exchanging, supporting, volunteering. All of these actions help us to become more aligned, more in our center, which is a beautiful way to live because then you have less worry. You don't worry. You're not always thinking in the future, what if this happens? What if that happens? That's a hard way to live because you're always off of your center. So to continuously bring ourselves back into a state of present awareness by actively listening, by pausing before we respond, by self-reflection, through mindful breathing. Very simple tools that I encourage you to use every single day. And ultimately, this is the exact thing that I am teaching in my program, right? This is my life's work. So I'm developing these programs that I want to invite you into. I want you to take a look at them, see if anything that I'm sharing with you resonates, and how might you integrate these lessons into your own life. What could you start today? What could you start today that would help you to become a more mindful communicator? How could you shift a belief pattern today? How could you support someone today into becoming more aware? So, my friends, this is what I wanted to share with you this morning. And I'm so grateful and thankful that you're here. Thank you for being with me. I hope that this was helpful. I want to invite you to check out my mind body alignment program. You can go to my website, artofalignmentacademy.com. I have a fun sneak peek for you there. That's 6 videos over the next 6 days that teaches you a tool in mind body alignment that you can use over the next 6 days. If you think that this information would be helpful for anyone that you know in your life, I want to ask you to please share my website or my YouTube channel, because these are all recorded. Obviously, this is live, but they're all recorded, will be on my YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. It always helps. And invite people in your life that you feel would benefit from this. Invite people to join us who you think would be able to grow, to change how they communicate in their life. People that you love and know that might be struggling. One by one, we become a greater community of mindful communicators. And in so doing, that starts to tip the scale. You can also invite people to join the Duchenne Method Facebook group. And we're doing our daily gratitudes there every day. So feel free to invite people to check us out. And finally, I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart that I really appreciate who you are. Continue to do the work of mind-body alignment, mind-body spirit, emotional alignment, to really see and view yourself as this very holistic, organic ecosystem that is continuing to grow every single day. We plant seeds and we continue to grow and to expand our hearts and to become more patient, more tolerant as life goes on. Because life can be really difficult. Life can throw us some unexpected curves. These are all tools to deepen your relationship with your heart source, with yourself, with your loved ones. So I hope that this was helpful to you today. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you next week as we continue to unravel and explore the art of mindful communication. If you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to reach out to me. You can leave comments on this channel after today, or if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. I'm right here for you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for being here. Bye, everyone. Until next week.